What if we had working warp drive technology? Imagine a day when the speed of light is no longer an unbreakable barrier, when humanity stands not only on the shores of distant planets, but crosses the vast oceans between stars in days, hours, or even minutes. This is not simply a step forward. It is an evolutionary leap that redefines what it means to explore, to communicate, to hope. The sudden and real existence of working warp drive technology shatters the boundaries that have long confined our species to a small pocket of the galaxy. What would that mean for us? For our future? For the very way we see ourselves in the universe? The moment the first warp-capable vessel returns from an expedition around Alpha Centauri, complete with breathtaking images of new suns, worlds, and perhaps mysterious signals, the entire planet would pause. Such an achievement isn't merely technological, it's philosophical. Suddenly, that which appeared infinite is now traversable. The universe, once remote and inscrutable, becomes our next neighborhood. In that instant, dreams that animated science fiction from H.G. Wells to the present leap from fantasy into fact. At first, the transformation would be felt in the quiet awe of scientists and engineers, who, after generations spinning theories about space-time and quantum foam, finally see equations transformed into engines, and engines into journeys. Warp drive, bending or compressing space ahead of a ship and expanding it behind, would sidestep the cosmic speed limit, effectively allowing travel at superluminal velocities. This breakthrough would not be about brute force or power, but about mastering the fabric of the universe itself. The equations of Einstein and Alcubierre, once thought arcane or unattainable, become everyday tools. The immediate impact would ripple through science and technology. Our fundamental understanding of physics would undergo rapid reevaluation. With working warp drive, many long-held assumptions about energy, causality, even the foundations of relativity, would be challenged. Researchers would scramble to reconcile these realities with current models. This could open doors to unified theories, insights into gravity, or quantum mechanics, even clues to the origins of the universe. In the wake of warp drive, innovation would accelerate at a pace stranger and far faster than any previous scientific revolution. The economic consequences would be just as profound. Space would cease to be a frontier and become a resource. The solar system, once a decades-long project for mineral harvesting or scientific outposts, would shrink. Suddenly, asteroid mining would be feasible, perhaps even mundane. Rare earth metals and resources extracted from distant celestial bodies could end the scarcity that has plagued advanced technologies. Economies would pivot toward space industries at a scale never before considered. Companies, nations, perhaps even new organizations born from the possibility of interstellar trade, would vie for influence. Spaceports, once backdrops for a few satellites and astronauts, would buzz with the traffic of daily departures and arrivals. Socially and culturally, warp drive's advent would ignite both a renaissance of hope and a reckoning with our deepest fears. On one hand, the stars have always been symbols of possibility, of escape, even of destiny. Whole generations, having grown up with tales of Kirk, Picard, and Janeway, suddenly see their heroes' journeys realized. The creative output would explode. New stories, art, and music inspired by first-hand encounters with cosmos. Language itself might change, sprouting new words for experiences and wonders previously unimaginable. Children would no longer look up at the night sky in speculation, but in anticipation of visiting those bright, distant lights. Yet, not everyone would greet warp travel with hope alone. Some would fear the expansion, what it could bring back, what dangers it might expose, how it would alter our cultures, instincts, and societies. History tells us that whenever horizons are widened, uncertainty and anxiety follow. Questions about environmental impact, human rights, and stewardship of new worlds would become more urgent. Would we find life? If so, would we respect it, or repeat the patterns of colonialism and exploitation that seem ingrained in humanity's past? The ethics of interstellar exploration would become central, prompting new philosophies, treaties, and even laws to govern our conduct beyond Earth. The geopolitical balance would tilt. The first nations, organizations, or alliances to master warp travel would leap decades, perhaps centuries, ahead of rivals. They could establish outposts, claim resources, or even meet extraterrestrial civilizations. This could spark cooperation, with nations pooling resources to manage what would otherwise be an unmanageable explosion of opportunity and risk. Or, it could lead to the kind of tensions that marked the earliest explorations on Earth. The specter of weapons, borders, and conflict would not vanish simply because the distances have grown vaster. If anything, the stakes might grow higher with every light year crossed. Communication, too, would mutate. Traditional signals take years to cross from one star to another, but with warp ships, the very concept of delay might vanish. Relays, courier services, or even instantaneous communication through emerging quantum technologies might flourish. News, trade, information, once limited by distance, would circulate freely, making a galactic civilization possible. The loneliness many have felt contemplating Earth as a pale blue dot would dissipate as we send and receive data from growing colonies, starships, and perhaps far stranger outposts than any ever built on Earth. But what about the very way we live? Colonization, ethically fraught and ambitious, would no longer merely be science fiction. Planets in habitable zones, exotic moons, and even engineered habitats could become homes for those seeking adventure, opportunity, or simply a fresh start. Massive ships, carrying hundreds or thousands, could depart to found settlements light years away. For the first time, humanity would have a release valve for social, economic, and environmental pressures. Entire cultures could develop in parallel, diverging over time as physical separation breeds new identities, new languages, perhaps even new species adapted to strange planets. There is also the question of danger, not from within, but without. The Fermi paradox, the silence we observe from the cosmos despite the apparent likelihood of other civilizations, has long puzzled scientists. Warp drive would allow us to search with urgency. Are the heavens truly empty or simply out of reach? What happens if we find evidence, past or present, of extraterrestrial intelligence? The first contact, or even the first credible artifact, would change our philosophy, our sense of uniqueness, and perhaps force us to redefine our place in the cosmic tapestry. Collaboration between humanity and another intelligence could ignite technological and social progress beyond comprehension. Conflict or misunderstanding, however, could have catastrophic consequences. The religious and existential currents unleashed by warp technology would be equally profound. Ancient creeds, texts, and philosophies would come under new scrutiny as their teachings are reframed in a context of a boundless universe teeming with mystery and potential. For many, the discovery of countless worlds, beautiful, hostile, or perhaps bearing traces of other beings, would deepen spiritual reflection. Faith might become stronger as the universe's grandeur is witnessed firsthand, or more nuanced as dogma confronts the realities of alien life and cosmic diversity. New religions might arise, focusing on the unity of life or the sacredness of discovery itself. Education would have to transform. A child born into a warp-capable world would not grow up with Earth as the sole blue-green island of relevance. History, science, ethics, and geography would be taught not simply as preparation for life on Earth, but as a toolkit for living among the stars. Schools might offer courses in xenolinguistics, astroengineering, or interstellar diplomacy. Young people might take gap years not to travel from one city or continent to another, but to journey to newly explored systems, learn new trades, or contribute to building new worlds. Of all the changes wrought by warp technology, perhaps the most significant is the new definition of home. Throughout history, home has been a village, a city, a nation, a planet. Warp drive stretches that definition to encompass solar systems, nebulae, and beyond. The human story grows less linear and more braided, less about the defense of one territory, more about the exploration and stewardship of the universe. Our art, music, and myths, once focused on Earth, would encompass visions of blue-lit gas giants, crimson twin suns, the auroras of alien atmospheres, the ruins left by unknown civilizations. Memory and imagination would expand in parallel, fed by the realities seen through alien skies. Inevitably, the rise of warp civilization would lead to entirely new kinds of challenges. The logistics of supporting far-flung colonies, the psychological strains of isolation, and adaptation to alien environments. The risks of technological breakdown far from help. All these would demand new solutions. Engineering would become even more critical, as ships and settlements would have to be self-sufficient, resilient against failures, and prepared for dangers no human has faced before. Medicine would have to anticipate new diseases, unknown toxins, challenges to the body and mind posed by strange gravity or atmospheric conditions. Legal systems would follow, as generations of human settlers grow up on distant worlds. Would they be governed by Earth laws, their own independent codes, or something altogether new? History teaches us that frontiers breed innovation, but also risk lawlessness and conflict. Warp technology could trigger constitutional crises on an interplanetary scale, as authorities on distant worlds and Earth struggle to balance autonomy with unity. New kinds of citizenship, new ways to define identity beyond nationality or even species would emerge. As infrastructure spreads, the face of humanity changes with it. Massive shipyards orbiting distant asteroids, floating cities soaring above cloud tops on Saturn, bustling market domes on Proxima b. These are not merely extensions of Earth, but entirely new forms of civilization. The architecture, art, and culture of interstellar cities would reflect the environment. Domes tinted in every color of the local sun, interior biomes simulating familiar forests and oceans, mingled with flora and fauna from dozens of worlds. Cuisine, fashion, and technology would hybridize, as recipes from Earth mingle with minerals and microorganisms from distant moons. As tools evolve to adapt to alien chemistry and physics, transportation itself would become unrecognizable by present standards. Warp lanes, carefully engineered corridors of space-time, regularly patrolled and monitored for safety, would crisscross the galaxy, connecting hubs of commerce and culture. Traffic control would be measured not in miles or kilometers, but in light-years and parsecs. Space traffic control, an arcane concept today, would become a dynamic, high-stakes global profession. Pilots, engineers, and navigators would take on the status of explorers, diplomats, even peacemakers. The environment would be another frontier. The lessons of environmental destruction on Earth, climate change, species loss, pollution, would loom large as we expand. Would we repeat our mistakes, stripping worlds of their resources without thought? Or could the expansion provide a second chance, room for sustainable development, a crucible for creating truly green civilizations? The responsibility to preserve, not just explore, would be ever-present. Alien life, if encountered, would demand caution, respect, and entirely new legal and ethical frameworks to prevent the sins of the past. In this new epoch, arts and literature would occupy a special role. No longer constrained by the familiar, they could reflect and interpret experiences never before had, vistas never before seen, emotions cultivated in the silence between stars. The first great novels or symphonies composed during a warp journey, the first paintings and sculptures created on another world, would become symbols of a truly planetary, and now galactic culture. The muses would no longer be Greek, but cosmic. The sense of time and distance would change profoundly. No longer separated by months or years of travel, people would be able to visit loved ones across solar systems, form relationships spanning the gulf of space, collaborate on projects on different worlds as easily as different cities. Family trees would branch across worlds. Births and deaths would be marked not only by Earth time, but by the journeys between stars. The psychological concept of far away would stretch and blur, challenging our notions of connection, absence, and loss. The risks would remain ever present. Accidents, conflicts, technological failures, Each would become deadlier in the context of cosmic scale, but also opportunities for heroism and innovation. The stories of rescue, survival, courage, and sacrifice would grow with the risks, enlarging our sense of what's possible and what's worth enduring. Yet, perhaps the greatest gift of warp drive is the perspective it offers. For the first time, humanity would see itself not as inhabitants of a single planet, but as participants in a cosmic drama. Our quarrels, wars, and prejudices would be set against the backdrop of infinite possibility and, paradoxically, infinite fragility. The universe is vast, dangerous, and silent, and in exploring it, we might find unity as a necessity, not just a dream. There are, of course, unknown unknowns. We cannot anticipate what awaits us as we cross each new frontier. There may be forces, dangers, or revelations beyond our current science, beyond our current imagination. The trajectory of civilizations, if we find them, may serve as warning, inspiration, or puzzle. Every journey would carry risk. Every discovery, the possibility of triumph or tragedy. At the heart of it, warp drive would become not merely a technology, but a calling. To learn, to adapt, to reach, to become. Each generation would define itself not only by what it has gained, but by what it chooses to seek. The stars, once the backdrop for stories of gods, destinies, and unreachable hopes, would become the stage for humanity's next acts. A story not bounded by what is, but by what could be. In the first years, there would be mistakes, heartbreaks, false starts. Ships may vanish, colonies fail. Some may say the cost is too high. But over time, as the maps fill with new lines, as babies are born beneath alien skies, as artifacts and artworks return to Earth, the horizon would move forever outward. Our children's children, or perhaps even our own, given new leaps in medicine, might look back in disbelief at a time when humanity was confined to a single sphere, hemmed in by the tyranny of distance. Whether one stands among crowds in a bustling domed city on a new world, or alone at the viewport of a warp ship watching a nebula drift by in impossible colors, the overwhelming sense would be of possibility and responsibility. The universe would no longer be silent, indifferent, or unreachable. It would be home, laboratory, Taniel, field of dreams, and, above all, a reminder of our capacity to transcend limits. And so, with warp drive, the fundamental question changes. No longer, how do we get there? But, what will we become now that the universe itself awaits us? The answer, as ever, would be written not in equations or technology alone, but in the choices, collective and personal, that we make with each new journey, each new world, each new dawn beneath a foreign sun. The story of humanity would become, indelibly and forever, a story of the stars. Thank you for watching the video. What do you think about today's topic? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and share the video to support the channel. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.